Hi again. In A.T. Robertson, The Divinity of Christ in the Gospel of John, we're in the middle of the interview with Pontius Pilate. This is part 2 of that. John does not follow all the ins and outs of the trial before Pilate, nor the fiasco before Herod, but he adds details about the end of the matter. Pilate had Jesus scourged to see if that would pacify the Jewish leaders, but it was useless. The appearance of Jesus in a purple robe and a crown of thorns upon his brow, and the half-humorous sally of Pilate, "Behold the man," even after his explicit statement of the innocence of Jesus, availed nothing with the people. They were in no mood for humor. They wanted the blood of Jesus and would be satisfied with nothing less. The effect was simply to make the leaders raise the cry, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Crucifixion was not a Jewish mode of punishment, although Alexander Jannaeus used it upon 800 Pharisees, copying the habits of the Hellenes, that's the Greeks. But the Romans used it constantly for criminals on Golgotha, and the Jews will be only too glad to see Jesus crucified. In a pet, Pilate yields to the Jews and bids them I don't know what he means by in a pet. That must be an expression that's expired. In a pet, Pilate yields to the Jews and bids them to take him and crucify him. "For I find no crime in him," according to chapter 18, verse 6. The most astonishing decision ever rendered by a judge, a frank yielding to popular clamor in the face of the acknowledged evidence and all justice, a sentence that brands Pilate forever as a coward and makes his name a byword through the centuries. But the Jewish leaders, in their glee over their triumph, tell too much. We have a law, and by that law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. When he was put on oath by Caiaphas, contrary to law, Jesus had confessed to this claim before the Sanhedrin, and on his confession they had passed sentence of death, which Pilate was now unwittingly confirming. But the words, "the Son of God," with the stress on "the," in connection with Pilate's strange interview with Jesus and his wife's dream, made him more superstitious and afraid than ever. So in spite of his surrender, Pilate takes Jesus back into the praetorium for a further interview. He affects indignation at Jesus, but is really overawed by the tone of authority in him. The result is that Pilate makes one more feeble effort to release the prisoner, whereupon the Jews threaten to report Pilate to Caesar as harboring a rival and so being guilty of treason. He knew all the time that they would do this, and his vacillation is thus explained. He made another presentation of Jesus with the salutation, "Behold your king. Shall I crucify your king?" he urges as he sat on the judgment seat on the elevated stone pavement. That is Gabbatha, by the way, in Hebrew, the stone pavement in front of the praetorium. The Sadducees, that is the chief priests, retort, "We have no king but Caesar," and swallow all their pride and all their hate of Rome to compass the death of Jesus. It is clear that the claim of Jesus to be the Messiah, the Son of God, the King, not of the Jews, but of Israel, is the crux of the charges against him. He cannot deny his divine sonship and his messianic mission. Pilate, cowardly as he undoubtedly was, yet had a Roman sense of justice, and felt that a stupendous wrong was done to an innocent man, which he did not have the courage to prevent. His spectacular washing of his hands simply emphasized the situation, and his uneasy conscience made him protest that all the guilt was upon the Jews. But unfortunately, there is guilt enough for all, and he bears his share along with Judas, Annas, Caiaphas, the Sanhedrin, and all who clamored for the blood of Jesus to come upon their heads and upon their children. The impossible thing has happened. The one perfect man of all the ages is under condemnation to die at the hands of the chosen people of God and against the forms of their own and Roman law. The Jews are guilty of treason to their true king, and Pilate of treason to his office. This is a point made by B.F. Westcott. I must admit I'd never thought of that before. Pilate is also guilty of treason. The Jews, because their king obviously is not Caesar, even by their own creed, their king is Jehovah. The hope of the Messiah had cheered the Jews through the ages, and now they have compassed his death in a resentful mood that reveals their own spiritual deficiency in the supreme crisis of history. So what did the Son of God imply? Westcott has a lot to say about that too in his great commentary on the Gospel of John. Who is the Son of God? Well, he is, John says, and Westcott underlines, he is the Logos of John chapter 1. So I'll put a link to the first of, I think it's 2 or 3 videos on that section of Westcott's commentary. Who is the Logos in John chapter 1? See you soon.